Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota podcast. My name is Mpho and I've got Tim Delace here with me. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, but not as well as you after Kansas win over the weekend.
Yeah, look, another Super Bowl. We're just getting used to this. But yeah, I need to find a way to make my way to one Super Bowl where he plays. I'm not gonna make this one, but there'll be a few more, and I need to find a way to get there. Because I need to see the Chiefs in their glory. But yeah, it was a little scary, a little nervy. I haven't slept, but after this, I am going to sleep. So yeah. Anyway, welcome to everyone. Welcome to all our lovely listeners and lovely viewers. Remember, we are a South African cricket podcast. If you didn't know already, remember that you can follow us on Full Quota Pod on X. We actually are quite active there. Also on Spotify, where for the audio listeners, and we're building a following there. And that's really, really awesome, along with Apple Podcasts for the Apple people like myself. And then if you're watching us right now and you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe and also send through your comments and the like. But before we go through, we've got some comments that we got from some of the fans, and we'll address them actually after this. But before we do anything, please do buy some coffee. Helps us go a long way in getting the content out and actually doing the content for you. And so any contribution, any and every contribution is appreciated, and we appreciate those who've done it already. Okay, Tim, you said that you had to address a couple of comments that we got from the previous episode on YouTube.
Yeah, look, the general feeling was it was largely centered around me, not you. So it was largely centered around my negativity around SA20. It was I gave a negative impression, and I watched it again. I watched the whole episode, and I could see how that could be. I will explain. And I've said this before. I've said it since pretty much since we've been doing the podcast. My threshold for T20 franchise cricket has reached its level. To a large extent, the majority of them passed me by. And after they finished the next week, I couldn't tell you who won. I couldn't tell you who was good, who was bad. They just, in general, passed me by. My love is for the longer formats of the game. That's not going to change. That is who I am. What I'm going to say, and maybe I haven't said it enough, SA20 is a fantastic product. SA20 is a product that South African cricket needs and will flourish from. I do worry about the future. I do worry about those players that will never get an SA20 contract. I do worry about that. So I temper my positivity with that. But I'm not taking away from the SA20 is a fantastic competition, and it's doing an awful lot of good for the game. And it's putting bums on seats. The crowds are amazing. So when I am negative, it's about franchise cricket as a whole, not SA20. SA20 is fantastic. My negativity is around the overload of T20 franchise cricket over something that I've been brought up on and love. That's where my negativity lies.
Look, and to back you, my issue with T20 franchise cricket is there's no context. There is no tie to anything. If, for instance, the Sunrise Eastern Cape are just by name alone a team from the Eastern Cape, yes, they may have players from the Eastern Cape, but there's no rivalry being created between them and the Durban team or the Cape Town team. There's nothing. If they win they win because they were good, but it ends there. There's no context to the franchise. There's nothing that ties us in compared to South Africa playing in a T20 World Cup. They are representing the country. You can say the Sunrisers are representing the Eastern Cape, or the Joburg Super Kings are representing Joburg by the virtue that they're using a stadium that was predetermined for them by Cricket South Africa to say, hey, these are the 6 stadiums. But there's no context. Right? It's not like I'm watching the Super Bowl and I know the team from Kansas City is playing and the city of Kansas City is watching and hoping that they become the number 1 team in the country against the team from Philadelphia who does that. It's going to take years for this thing to be ingrained, but we've lost a bit of that culture by going away from the traditional domestic teams. So there's no history to the SA20 and therefore no context in the context of the game. To me and many others, the SA20 is just a tournament that makes the players, the South African players, the players in the system, richer. It's kind of like a bonus for them. It's just that they have to play for their bonus rather than being given a 13th check or a 14th check or whatever you want to call it. And that's essentially what this tournament is. It's great. It's got fans. We love it. I think it's great for South African cricket and it's a fantastic tournament. But fundamentally, from a context perspective, and this is where it might jump the shark as soon as possible, is that there is no rivalry. Nobody's like sitting here going, I have a team, I do this. I chose the Joburg Super Kings because I come from Joburg and I support everything from Joburg. I'm angry when they lose. I'm happy when they win. But that's not the same for everybody else. People are busy jumping around. It's season 3 and people are saying, what team must I support? And on top of that, with the auction moving, players are going to move around, which means there's no tie to players. And on top of that, you lose the context. And we need to find a way to create context in order for us to do this. That's why things like the World Test Championship are there, because they said Test match cricket had no context. You're just playing for the sake of playing. And to a certain extent, that's what's happening here. You're playing for the sake of playing. And essentially, the context is an audition for the IPL, which many of us do watch, but it's largely for an Indian audience. Right? If you do well here at SA20, you could potentially play in the US, you could potentially play elsewhere. It benefits the players, but as a fan, when I'm watching, I must ask myself, what am I watching? And that's why our show is great, because we try to create the context for you. We try to give you the storylines. We try to give you what everything is and how everything fits in, because it's largely a tournament with no context. The domestic CSA T20 has more context in itself because of the history and the tradition of these provinces, and also it's a representation of the areas, right? Only SA20 has is just that, it's a representation of the areas, but don't represent large swathes of South Africa. They're not covered, right? You can say the East Sunrisers are Eastern Cape, but they don't play in Border. They never play in East London, right? You gave in my Cape Town, a team in Cape Town, and you also gave the Bolanta a team, but there's also Southwestern districts in the Western Cape. They're not being covered, right? Northwest isn't being covered by the Joburg Super Kings like it was in the franchise system, nor to KZN Inland, nor in Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and everywhere else. So we need to find ways, and maybe it's a traveling circus. Maybe we do play in all the stadiums, but it's a traveling circus. One part of the country that isn't done, and it's a massive part of the country from a sports perspective, is the Free State. There's no team in the Free State. None. At all. So context-wise, it's a billionaire's playground. They bought teams, they brought them here to play in a tournament, they get the broadcast rights, they get the money, the players get paid, someone wins a tournament, someone wins player of the tournament, batch of the tournament, ball of the tournament, and we go home. No context, nothing. I don't come back to you after the SA20 on Feb 9 and be like, next year we got you, Tim. Joburg Super Kings got you. Why? Because there's going to be an auction at the end of the year and the team could look different. So anyway, that's the start. That's our little soliloquy. Let's get into what's happened this week. We've had some great cricket happening this week. Nothing domestic, just international. SA Under-19 women. You saw the interview we had with Dinisha Devnarain, and they did it. They made it to the semifinals today. England winning, crushing the USA's hopes of potentially qualifying, and Nigeria as well for a semi-final. And we don't like the system, but finally this time, Tim, the system has worked for us.
It's worked for us. We'll have to wait and see if it's gonna bear fruit, because we already know our opposition. But look, they've done everything they needed to do, and they had some hurdles, because once you have a shortened game, it does make things a little bit more tricky. It does then tend to make things a little bit more even in a lot of games when you have a shortened game. So there've been some hurdles for the team, but they've got over those hurdles. They've ticked all the boxes. They look strong. That's the thing for me. They look strong, particularly in the batting. To me, there've been some very good bowling performances individually.
Man,
but I think they look really good. They look really, really impressive. And I think that everything is there for them to go all the way. That's all I'm gonna say. Everything is set for them.
Yeah.
To go
Look, I think job number one is done. Qualify for the semi-finals. They did that. We had some incredible performances this week, largely from the bowlers doing their job. They bowled Nigeria out for 16. Tabi Singh Nini had probably the ball of the tournament, first ball of the match, straight through the gates. And then Faye Cowling joined in, and so did Seshni Naidi to get Nigeria out for 16. And then they played Ireland in the first game of the Super Sixes on Saturday, and it was Mona Lisa Lahori. Mona Lisa Lahori in 2020 was playing in what was that tournament? It was like an interprovincial tournament. Not interprovincial, it was like a top 60 players tournament. Forgotten what the name was, but all the Proteas were there, and then the next level of players were there. And she was like 14 or not 14, like 12 or how old she was, and she was playing with those players there. And now she's taking wickets, and she took 4 wickets, and it was a perfect spell that she bowled there in a rain-reduced game that brought Ireland in. Ireland's opening bowler, that Jackson, my word. She's got a bright future with her, especially if she can keep that action, that slinging action as a left arm seamer. Caused a few problems, but the girls got through. And my worry, Tim, was the batting. I think they don't have a lot of reps, but I think tomorrow, USA, hopefully there's not going to be a lot of rain. It's going to give them an opportunity to try and bat throughout a full 20 overs, put a score that makes everyone, scared, the semi-finalists. And then we'll see how that goes there. So we got that, and then the semi-finals on the weekend, and potentially the final next week. So we are Dinisha, job done. Well, not job done. First part is done. Job's not done yet. You got two games that matter. Also, I'm more inclined not to give others a chance in this tournament at this point in time, but it's an opportunity for her to do so and still keep the same standard and try to win games with them. But I also do think you don't want to lose before your semi-final. You just want to keep momentum going. You don't want girls to be hesitant as to what their plans are and what they want to do. But we trust in coach, we believe in coach, and we know that most likely, Tim, we're going to get ourselves a W. Not a W, a trophy. In this tournament. Okay, let's look at the 4-day series fixtures before we go into SA20. We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to go through the log, and we're going to talk about each of the teams while looking at the log, and then we're going to go through the fixtures and kind of give you context as to what is needed, because in this week, you don't want to lose games. This is the week where you decide your fate. When it comes next week, your player fate, whether you have 2 games to get into a final, we have 1 game to get in the final, or you go home or go wherever in the world you need to go prepare for the Champions Trophy. But anyway, let's look at 4-day series. We've got 3 Division 2 fixtures starting on Thursday. The ACD Express Tuskers, that's KZN Inland, will be hosting Mpumalanga Rhinos in Pietermaritzburg. That should be quite a interesting game because obviously the Tuskers need the win to get themselves to the top of the log. The 6-gun Grill Garden Route Badgers are playing the Northern Cape Heat. That's a battle between number 2 and number 3 on the log. and that's happening in Otoran. That's a game. If there ever was a game of the week, Tim, this would be the game of the week. And then finally, the Eastern Cape Inyati taking on the Limpopo Impalas in Border in East London. So that's also a really lovely game, mid-table clash. Really nice. These two teams, when they play, it's actually quite nice. But Tim, is the game of the week the Badgers versus the Northern Cape Heat?
It's got to be. It really has got to be. I think Mpumalanga, they may be competitive against the Tuskers, but I just don't see them getting the W against the Tuskers. So it's gonna be that game. Badgers have been competitive. Badgers have been thereabouts. They've been much better than they were last season. But you'd have to say, with everything on the line, Northern Cape Heat are going to be itching to make sure that they maintain number one spot.
Yeah, and this is one of the final rounds of the competition. There's one more round left, so it's going to be. This is the time where if you want to get yourself promoted and win a tournament, these are the games you need to win. The Tuskers need to find a way to get a win against the Rhinos, and Northern Cape Heat, who are looking to get themselves promoted after 2 years of being the bridesmaid. They need to find a way to get that W against a very strong Badger side in Otoran. Okay, that's pretty much it from a cricketing perspective. That's non SA20. Now let's go into the SA20 and have ourselves a very big discussion. One of the key things that happened last week, Tim, was that the Sunrisers Eastern Cape decided to go win 4 on the bounce, and get themselves back into the tournament. Durban Super Giants are sitting at rock bottom. I don't know what's gone wrong with them, but they just don't look like a team that that made the final a year ago. And then you have the Pretoria Capitals in 5th position. They are like the Durban Super Giants in must-win mode. They cannot lose any games. There's no more advantage left, and it's surprising because I think they still have the best top 3 in the tournament, and that top 3 has actually scored runs, but somehow they haven't made it through. The Joburg Super Kings are sitting in 4th, a game in hand to the Sunrisers Eastern Cape. They had a massive win yesterday against the Sunrisers in Johannesburg. Lucho Sapamla coming through. Hardest for you, making me eat my words. Coming through with 4 wickets. Sapamla took 3 wickets, and yeah, it's surprising that the Super Kings are there, but look, if you're consistent enough at this point in the tournament, you'll be fine. I see they've got Patirana back and Tikshana back. So this team is probably looking like one of the best bowling attacks in the tournament, closely. Well, yeah, arguably with MI Cape Town in 2. But anyway, then the Sunrisers, we spoke about them. They came back. They scored runs. They took wickets. And they made sure. They started with the Durban Super Giants, and they just kept on winning for there. And then they finished with the Super Kings on Friday, but then they lost on Sunday. And had they won on Sunday, they would have qualified for the playoffs. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. They sit in 3rd on 4 points. And then MI Cape Town, 4 wins out of 7. They are in 2nd position and looking to finish in the top 2. Remember, the top 2 get 2 chances to make the final. They play in a qualifier, and the loser plays in qualifier 2 against the winner of the eliminator, which would be number 3 and 4. So you want to finish in 2nd, and the Super Kings, the Sunrisers, and MI Cape Town are going to be, along with the Paarl Royals, are going to be fighting for those top 2 spots. And sitting at the top, sitting pretty in pink, Joe Root, Luandre Pretorius, David Miller, and the Spinners. On Saturday, they gave us a postage stamp game, a game that we're going to use in pub quizzes all around the world. The Paarl Royals bowled all 20 overs of spin, and they managed to defend 140 at home and against the Pretoria Capitals. And that was a beautiful game for them. That helped them qualify for the playoffs. It doesn't guarantee them the top 2 spot, but it's given them qualification for the playoffs. Tim, let's start with the Paarl Royals, and we'll go through all the other teams systematically. But what do you make of the Paarl Royals, and do they have enough to go all the way.
Yeah, this week it was all about maintaining number one spot for them. And they did it beautifully. They did it absolutely beautifully. They knew that two of those games that were going to be at home, they got the business done. We said last week the influence of Joe Root. Joe Root in that last week got a man of the match performance with the bat. He's having a massive impact on that team. I genuinely think if he was not there, I don't think they make top four. I really don't think they make top four. Despite the fact that they have chipped in, we've had people like Ruben Herman. The last game or the game before scored runs well. But I just think his whole impetus within that squad has had a massive impact, and they've gelled really well as a team. You're right. Their massive strength is playing at home. It's enormous strength with that bowling attack. But look, they've done the business. They are there. They are on top of the log where they need to be. Luandre has been sensational. Maybe the last couple of games not quite as impressive as he was at the start, but still hugely impactful in the performances. So no, very impressed so far.
Yeah, and yeah, they're a really good side. The question for me, and I think this is the week we'll see it, is that when they come to Joburg and try to play up here, whether the bowling attack will be able to cope with this. Remember, they played the Pretoria Capitals last week. They won the game, but they still conceded over 200 runs at Centurion. And so it's a question of, can it carry? Can it travel? Can the bowling travel? I think the batting will travel. That extra bounce will be great for them. But also remember, the first qualifier is in Gqeberha, which slightly flatter pitch compared to the ones here on the Highveld, so it might suit them better. They won't play 5 spinners, but I think they have enough to get through that qualifier. But it's a question of when you come to the Highveld, and if you watched Hardest for You yesterday, he broke his back. Like, honestly, it was like hard length, and that gets you wickets. It's hard to bat up here, and it opens up so much for underdog teams that aren't as humming as the Paul Royals. But they have a game this week at the Wanderers, and we'll see how that's going to work out. Looking at MI Cape Town, they've been under the radar because of their neighbors in the north, but I look at that team and I'm like, the batting is coming along really nicely. That top 3 is becoming a lot more consistent. And also we see that David Brevis now has a secure spot for all those who are complaining in the team, and he's now contributing to runs. It's Reza, it's Rassi, it's Ryan. It's a bit of a blast from the past. It's a bit of this is what South Africa are in World Cups. But it's not a World Cup, so they actually are scoring runs compared to when they wear green and gold. But the other underrated thing is the bowling for MI Cape Town. Trent Bolt has been sensational for them to lead the attack. Kagiso is actually holding his form that he's gotten from the red ball cricket, and he's transferred into here. Normally in T20s, KG tends to go off color, but this time he has it. And obviously George Linder as the all-rounder, who every single body and their cat is saying George Linder must be in the South African team as an all-rounder. The problem is, I support it. I support the George Linder coming to South Africa thing. My only issue is that your selectors and your coaches refuse, and I will say that, refuse to have a spin bowler as a spin bowling all-rounder. Effectively, the question you have is, from a bowling perspective, they like to compare him to Keshav, but he needs to be compared to Vian and Marco. Marco's not getting dropped. And because we have this fascination with all-rounders who can bowl pace, Vian's is next in line. But sometime we need to look at the spinner. But I think George Linder is just suffering from that perspective, right? Because he's also a left-arm spinner. You've got Keshav as a left-arm spinner. But his batting has been sensational, Tim.
he's been a revelation. Since he's been picked for the T20 squad, he's felt a new lease of life. He's felt there's a freedom. Subsequently to that, and I said it in previous podcasts, he was playing to me like he was desperate for a franchise gig. That's what he was desperate for. He was desperate for a franchise gig. Anyway, it didn't matter where it was. He would have taken a Big Bash. He would have taken a BBL. He would have taken a PSL. That's where he was playing. And his performances in the other formats were waning. Whatever's happened, whatever's changed in his mind, whatever's changed in his belief, whatever's changed in his game, it's worked a dream. It is absolutely worked a dream. He's always been a high quality cricketer. He's always been that. And he has been unlucky that he hasn't played more for the national side. But he's just playing really well now. He's tipping with the wickets. His batting is on another level than what I haven't seen this sort of batting from him for a good couple of seasons now. And then the other all-rounder, I've always been a fan of Tolano. I've always thought there's something there. There's something there to be working with. I just don't think the consistency's been there. But it's been there in this tournament. His performances early in the tournament went a long, long way in putting my Cape Town into second place on the log. He's been a huge impact. Both the all-rounders have had a huge impact on my Cape Town's performances.
Okay. Looking at the team in third, the Sunrisers, who were down and out last week when we did this podcast. They had lost 3 in a row, and they've proceeded to win 3 on the bounce. Actually, won 4 on the bounce. And then lost on Sunday. They're looking more like the team we expected, Tim, on paper. Very strong batting. Their bowling was also quite good and bowled well in Tebeja. And it seems like now finally they've gotten the time. They're clicking at the right time. Aiden scoring runs, Tristan scoring runs, Marco scoring runs, Tom Abel's contributing, Jordan Harman's the question, but David Bellingham was also contributing at the top. It's seemingly they've gotten that team back on track, and this week is just also as important for them to start getting wins before the playoffs.
This team know how to win when they need to. They didn't play well at the beginning of the tournament, but when they need to get a win out the back, when they need to get over the line, when it's now or never in terms of getting into those playoff positions, because of they've won this tournament a couple of times, they know what they're doing. They know how to get over the line. And you're right, it looks like a team again. It doesn't look like an individual. At the start, it was Markham was playing really well and scoring runs. The team were not. The team were all over the place. They were very, very poor performances. They're now playing as a team and everybody's chipping in. And that's a winning culture. Dangerous for other teams.
No, very dangerous. And you thought the defending champions were out. They decided to come back in. And it's all because the Durban Super Giants. We're going to get to that team because I just don't understand what's going on. The Joburg Super Kings, the dad's army, and the father's army, the dad's army, the granddad's army, 45-year-olds, 40-year-olds, however you want to call them, anybody above the age of 35 is playing for this team. They've somehow got some sort of semblance working. The problem with the team was always the batting. I think their bowling was good enough to get them competing, even though they had all these injuries. But the question was always the batting. You had Faf, but the question was, could you get Devon Conway batting in form, even though he wasn't on form against New Zealand? Could you have gotten Johnny Besto and the best out of Johnny Besto, even though he's always flaky when it comes to these tournaments? If you can see all his IPL performances, he'll have a good one, he'll have a bad one. He'll never be able to take a tournament by storm. And then you look at Lewis Deploy, you also look at Via Libba, unknown T20, lesser known T20 lights, and they were effectively there to kind of put the glue together into that batting unit and try to help that batting unit take down big scores or set big scores. And then obviously Donovan Ferreira, you're taking a punt on him. But what we've realized is that he's a much better he's actually his bowling is what was needed for the Joburg Super Kings and his fielding, because did you see that catch on the boundary? That one-handed catch, kind of like giving a lesson to the fans as to how you do that whole Betway catch a 2 million. It was sensational to me.
It was. I have to admit, it's a game that I missed. I was otherwise engaged, but I did see it in the highlights reel. When I watched the highlights, I was like, okay, wow. I'm sorry for being critical, Donovan. I'm really, really sorry for being critical of your batting performances. But that is a catch and a half.
Because we didn't know he was a bowler as well. That's the thing.
Yeah, he's been very, 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 very useful. Very useful with the ball this season.
Yeah, similar to Joe Root. People are asking me, like, can Joe Root bowl? I'm like, yeah, he bowls in red ball cricket. It's good enough. And yeah, he did quite well. Now to the bottom two teams, Pretoria's Capitals and Durban Super Giants. The Capitals themselves have a very strong batting unit. They're really, really good. But Tim, is it their bowling that's giving them problems? Because you've got Jacks at the top, you've got Smeed, you've got Gurbaz, Keegan Leon Cachet came through last week and he batted well, but again, they just can't get over the line.
They are the same every season. Every season, we go, Pretoria Capitals, probably the strongest squad on paper. They look like a team, and they do tend to focus on the batting. It's not that their bowling is necessarily weak, it's weaker, I would say. But we look at the team and we go, in Pretoria, they're going to make 200 every game because of those top order is just so much firepower. But if we say the same thing every season and the same result happens, i.e., they've tried to deceive, they don't show us their talents, they don't produce the goods, something is wrong. I don't know what is wrong. They've had a change in coach. So it's more than just the coach, because the same thing is happening. They are not performing. Whatever's happening, it's not working. It really isn't working.
No, it isn't. And if you look at the last team, Durban Super Giants, they have a plethora of problems. I think they don't have an out-and-out pacer to help them win games and take wickets. They also are struggling from the batting front, especially that top four. They're not firing. Quinton de Kock was pushed back to the top of the order. Brandon Miller's not doing anything. Kane Williamson is the only one who's doing something. And obviously we got the innings from Heinrich Klaassen the other day, but he's been largely quiet as well. And if there is ever as a player this team is so reliant on, it is Heinrich. And yeah, they play Paarl today. I'm in Paarl, and I'm so scared for them because I think they're not going to get a win, and I think it might just end up being embarrassing.
Yeah, nature T20 cricket is unpredictable. That's the one major positive I would say for this format is its unpredictability, because anything could happen. But I think this you can put to a large extent on the constant tinkering. I think Lance has tinkered with this 11 far too much. The 11, the batting order, when bowlers bowl outside the power play, inside the power play, there's been far too much tinkering with this team. And I do think, to a large extent, I think it has affected them. Because, as you say, they've got superstars. They've got guys that do it on the international stage regularly. Brandon King is a really powerful batter. They're not getting the best out of him. If you're not getting the best out of him, don't play him. Whatever, try somebody else. Quinton, I don't know. But again, moving up and down the order, I don't think is the right decision. As I say, I just think it's just they tried too many things too quickly, and the season has just unraveled from there.
Yeah. But they still have a chance to make the playoffs. They need to win today, and they need to win all their games going forward. Bonus points will also help them, and so too the Pretoria Capitals. They need to win all their games. The only team that's secure a playoff spot is the Paarl Royals. The other 5 teams are up for grabs. But I think after today, MI Cape Town will get their qualification, and then the rest of the other 4 teams will be fighting for those spots in the eliminator, which is not bad, but gives you a chance at winning the tournament. You need to be in the dance in order for you to get the girl, and they are really, and that's what these other teams are fighting for. Okay, Tim, let's go into the fixtures for this week. This is the final week of the regular season of the Betway SA20. Next week, we'll be talking playoffs. 1 and 2 play in the first qualifier next week, Tuesday, and then 3 and 4 will play in the eliminator the day after, and then the loser of qualifier 1, that's the 1 and 2, will play the winner of the eliminator for the right to meet the winner of qualifier 1 in the final at the Wanderers. So lots of games next week, but this week, this is how it goes. The Paarl Royals play Durban Super Giants today. If you're listening to this or watching this later tonight, the game will be on and you probably will know what has happened. What the Durban Super Giants need is that they need a win to keep themselves alive. The Paarl Royals, having qualified for the playoffs, are looking to cement with a 1 or 2 spot. There's no advantage to finishing first, outside of, I'm assuming, getting the home dressing room when you play at the neutral venue. On Tuesday, that's tomorrow, a must-win game for the Pretoria Capitals against the Joburg Super Kings. This is a Gauteng derby. You see, trying to give you context between the two teams. So it's North versus South. It's a Transiexke. Pretoria Capitals desperately need a win. The Joburg Super Kings with a win would put their one foot into, would effectively qualify for the playoffs. If the Capitals are out and DSG lost, the Joburg Super Kings with a win would qualify for the playoffs. MI Cape Town taking on the Sunrisers. This is a top of the table clash. This is a potential playoff clash, potential final in my eyes. You can have a look at both teams and see how they are going to fare. Sunrisers obviously need to qualify with a win, and so they will be hoping that they get the W on Wednesday. Whereas MI Cape Town want to beat the Sunrisers in case all the other results are going the way of the Super Giants and the Capitals, to bring the Sunrisers back and hopefully get someone to pip them at the final post, because, yeah, you don't want a three-peat here. I wouldn't want a three-peat. And then on Thursday, Super Kings play the Paarl Royals in a potential playoff match as well as a potential final. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the Paarl Royals handle the bouncy pace and bounce at the Wanderers. On Friday, the Capitals host MI Cape Town. That's a big game for the Capitals. They need to win that. If they hadn't won the game against the Super Kings, then it's just a dead rubber, with teams just getting through and playing for nothing, essentially. And then the Sunrisers play the Paarl Royals in what is another potential final. Good to see how both teams, who are the most informed teams in the tournament, would be faring on Saturday morning in the matinee game at 1 p.m. And in the afternoon game, MI Cape Town take on the Pretoria Capitals in Newlands. And that's the final game of the season. It may not have any playoff implications outside of MI Cape Town possibly looking to make it into the top 2. But I do think they might have it wrapped up early in the week. Tim, what is your game of the week?
Well, it's got to be the my Cape Town Sunrisers game. Simply because if the Sunrisers win that, which is possible, then Pretoria Capitals have a slight door ajar, because they have got
9 points.
3 games,
Yeah.
and 2 of those games are against Cape Town, I think. All right.
Yes, they are. Yes,
Yes. Two of
it's
those
a
games
home and
are
away
against Cape
stand.
Town. Home and away. That potential, if the Sunrisers win, could be an absolute blockbuster occasion. With as we said, with the Pretoria Capital's firepower, it could be huge, but we'll have to wait and see. Of course, if my Cape Town wins, then it's all.
Yeah.
From
Then we
my
have the
Cape
four
Town's
teams.
perspective, it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So good luck to the players and good luck when this week when they're playing. And if you can get to a stadium, please do get there. One last thing that I think we need to talk about, it's something that's come up this week. A lot of people talking about it on socials as well as in WhatsApp groups. Just the lack of Black African representation in the SA20. And yes, you'll say, Mpho, there's Sibonelo Makanya, Luto Sipamla. You're going to tell me about Kwena, Kagiso, Lungi, Andile. Andile Similani as well. But you can count the Black Africans playing on your hand. I don't think they go. Tim just says 5.
No,
And
I'm saying with your hat, like you said.
yes,
With your
yes,
hat.
it might be 2 hands. I think we might end up at
Yeah.
what is it?
Yeah.
Slightly more than 5, but it is worrying. And in a country that works through transformation, that's gone through what it's gone through. Yes, SA20 represents a meritocracy, but also there's a lot of, in this meritocracy, there's also a lot of subconscious bias, unconscious bias, where people are selecting players who are white and don't cut it. Like for me, Lutus Pamela been coming in as a replacement into league when he's one of the 5 fast bowlers that we actually have available and fit. Bothered me a lot. There are teams that need an out-and-out fast bowler, and Luto not getting an auction price wasn't great. And all those Black African players I was talking about also are one of the lowest paid in the tournament, right? Outside of Sikagiso and Kwena and Lungi, the rest of them are hanging around 125,000 rand and that side and that for the tournament. And so it's really disappointing in a country that pushes transformation at the national level. If I look at the SA U19 team, they are well transformed and they are playing such great cricket. And it's a fallacy to think that no, if you start picking on race, your teams are going to be weaker. If you embrace it, you can actually do a great job. Look at how the Lions in domestic cricket are doing with a fully transformed team. They're the team that fields more than the target in terms of Black African players and players of color. And I thought by this time we'd have gotten to that point. There'd be more Black players being introduced into the system, and there are a lot of them sitting outside not getting exposure. One of those players is Ntemba Tleshile. I think he still has a future at the Proteas. He may not have had the greatest domestic years, but it's tournaments like these where you get exposure and you get access to mentors who could help your game. And a guy like Spanelo, like Ntemba Tleshile, may not have access to the Jacques Callises, the Dale Steins, all of those players that are mentoring and coaching at the SA20, and it sets them back. It really does. Even the youth players that were selected, 5 white guys and 1 black guy, and it doesn't mean that there are no Black Africans. There are. Richard Silitswane is one of them, and I think he's more talented than some of the players that are playing there under these youth contracts, right? And so my question is, what are we going to do, right? We've carved out a thing for youth players, but we've never thought about bringing in some sort of protection for players of color. I'm not talking Black African, I'm talking across the spectrum, right? We need to have that sort of protection because it exacerbates the gap. And you'll tell me it's 30 years since we were in the new South Africa and everything else, but these challenges and these gaps in South African cricket have been persisting for over 100 years. And how do you change a system that's been going on for over 100 years, and we are sitting here 30 years in and we're not seeing any progress. It was always going to take longer than 30 years, but you would have wanted to start seeing the fruits of the transformation coming through in there. One of the responsibilities sits with CSA for not doing enough, but you know where CSA is and what they were doing. And the other thing is on SA20 and those people who were part of SA20 and are running it, right? What is the plan? Are we just gonna because it doesn't look good, Tim, and I'm gonna end it here. It does not look good when I see a lily white team playing in SA20. It bothers me because I know there are players sitting at home who can start for these teams and can play for these teams. But we're picking guys who are, some of them are average white guys. You know how I feel about Corbin Bosch. I still think he's an average player. I still think he has moments, some peaks where he can do well, like when he was playing in tests and playing in ODIs. But there are many others in this tournament that are there. John Smuts, Simon Harmer. Sorry, Tim. I could name a few, but I don't want to isolate players. But I'm sitting here going, something needs to be done. We need to have a plan. And if the plan is SA20 schools, and hopefully those players are going to come through, what I'll tell you now is we've gone through 2 cycles of under 19s and only selected 1 black player as a youth player out of the 12 selections that were there. Obviously, some have been repeat selections, but you had 12 selections, and of those selections, one of them is a black African, and that's Gwena. But you're telling me that there aren't any other black players who can make this team, even at a youth thing. I'm even leaving the guys in the system. But what it means is that those guys in the system are going to fall far behind. Remember, I even said that this is like a bonus for the players in there because you're getting the extra money. Even if it is 125,000 Rand, it would go a long way to the black players. And then you'll say, no, but they must play better. They must put their hands up. Yes, but the system is flawed. The system is designed for them not to succeed, for them not to be the best. But anyway, nobody cares about that system, and that's why we're here. When we're seeing an SA20, we're just an 11 of all white guys. And then you're sitting there going, but it's happening in South Africa. And then you're saying, but the crowds are diverse, and it looks like the Rainbow Nation, but the team on the field does not look like a Rainbow Nation. But yeah, I'll stop there.
I have many issues with SA20, and we have discussed them at length beforehand. I am genuinely worried about the future of our game below this lovely white cloud that we're all living in and playing on.
You might as well call it that. It's actually a great adjective.
I have a huge problem with that. I really do. However, I don't think you can tell the owners we are where we are, and we are where we are because of our own mistakes. I don't think we can tell the owners, right, okay, next year we need to have X of this and X of that. I don't think that is a viable option. And as ugly as it is, it comes down to money. Sponsors will leave. That's just, it's not nice, but that is the world that we live in. That will happen because subconsciously the individual will then go, right, this is a substandard competition. Not because it is, but the perception will then be this is a substandard competition. You touched on right at the end, and I think that it's not going to be the only answer, but I do think it has to be a part of the answer. Again, I have my issues with it. I have a huge issue of taking somebody from, because I think what's going to happen is hotshot 18-year-olds from SA schools is going to get a franchise cricket contract and they're going to play for those owners throughout the world. And we won't see them at all. I have a huge issue with that. But let's put that aside. That SA schools competition has to be an avenue where, right, we have spotted this black African cricketer, we need to play him. We need to pick him as a rookie and then play him through SA20 seniors. That's what should be happening. and there needs to be a lot of work that goes into that. Should we see more Black African players that are currently available in it? You've already touched on it. Richard Salatswani should be there.
Senokwane also should be there.
Well, Senokwane on his career, I'd say no. I like him, but not T20 cricket. His career strike rate is under 100. I don't think that. The Sipol Nkwabi from Northwest, and there was a third one. But that's a huge issue. The problem is, it's not just Black African players, it's Black African batters. And that's a wider problem within Cricket South Africa. So it is an issue. It is a complicated issue, but I don't think the answer should be right. Now we need to have X of this and X of that in your squad of 19. I don't think that is the answer. It is about seeing Richard Salatswani and picking him in the squad. The other thing that I would touch on, again, is I don't think it's deliberate, but it's subconscious. Hazard Williams gets injured. Who replaces him? A white player. I think we've got enough Black African bowlers within the system to replace Lazard with a black bowler. So then it then becomes even more of a problem where you pick a black bowler, he gets injured, or a bowler of colour, and you replace them with a white player. That exasperates what you say, that the team gets more lily white, and we need to move forward from that. The other thing would be, if you look at the players that are continually being picked, I'm talking about players of colour here, not so much black players. It's Proteas players. It's not Cody Yusufs. It's not
Misali. It's
not domestic players. It's players that are already playing for South Africa. Quentin Parker is going to be the outside of that, the outlier, because we know his talent, his ceiling is so high. The problem is, season 1 he gets picked, season 2 we don't see him. Why are we not seeing him in season 2? That's an issue. That's a big issue.
Yeah. Okay, Tim. Look, I think my thing is we can protect the interests of black players, similar to how the IPL protect the interests of Indian players by making sure that you have a cap on internationals. But obviously we have a cap on internationals, but we don't have further protections to protect black African players. And I hope that we get to see that. And I know you can't force the owners and you can't do anything, and I get that, and they'll go away. But for me, yes, pick on merit, but the people you're picking, there are those who are better than them and don't get an opportunity because we don't know them. And we've seen in the auction, people are picking people they're comfortable with, people who lived in Durban, people who they've heard from their friends are good players and they've never seen them play. But we've got guys who we're watching on YouTube every week playing domestic cricket, playing CSA T20s, and are showing up and showing out and look like me, but they don't get the opportunity at SA20. Like, I haven't seen Oguhle Cele this tournament, and I'd like to see him. I think he's great. I think he's a great fast bowler. He's better than what some of the teams have. But again, we won't see it. But yeah, look, it's final week for SA20. I don't want to finish on a dampener, but yeah, everyone get to the stadiums, enjoy it. It's the last week where you'll be seeing your teams in your area. And then obviously next week will be Gqeberha, Centurion, and the Wanderers. Outside of that, have a great day. Remember, Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and you like the content. You want to comment as well, please do comment on YouTube. Like and subscribe on YouTube, and also follow us on Twitter, and also follow us on Apple, Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. And remember, please do buy us some coffee as well at Buy Me a Coffee. Was it / buymeacoffee.com/4quarter podcast. For myself and Tim, it's goodbye and lesale kakahiso.